How high is a person capable of jumping from a place and from a run? Which athletes are the most leaping in the world? And what do unusual jumps from several tens of kilometers look like? This is Infinity, and in this episode I'll show you the highest jump in the history of mankind, as well as the most different jumps that will definitely surprise you, and that you definitely haven't seen. As a rule, when it comes to jumping, many people immediately think of the high jump, one of the most famous sports. So let's start with it. Last year, the Olympic Games were held in Tokyo, and athletes participated in the high jump. The champions were Italian Gianmarco Tamberi and Qatari Mutaz Barshim. Both showed a result of 7.7 feet. That's very good, but they still couldn't break the record, which has been for about 20 years. It was set by the Cuban Javier Sotomayor. At the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992, he took gold with a leap of 7.6 feet, and a year later he set the legendary record in Salamanca. The athlete jumped 8 feet in height. He was the first person to break the 8 feet milestone, which previously seemed something unreal. Subsequently, the Cuban tried to surpass his own achievement but could not. Neither could any other jumper. The 1993 record is still unbeaten, and no one knows when it will be broken. Some jump over the bar, and some like to dive into the water from a height. I'm sure there are plenty of people like that among you, too. At what maximum height have you jumped? Maybe from a 16-feet tower in a swimming pool? Or from some 32-feet cliff in the countryside? If so, you've already got a lot of respect. But none of you have jumped from greater heights than Swiss Lazaro Schaller, nicknamed Lasso. He loves to jump from great heights and set a fantastic record in 2015. He climbed a rock near the Cascada de Salto waterfall and dove into the natural pool from a height of 193 feet. Just imagine how high that is. That's about the height of a 20-story building. At the moment Lasso entered the water, his speed was around 75 miles per hour. The Swiss jumped very good, at attention with his hands pressed down, correctly grouped. But even with this, and being a professional, he was not without injury. Lasso hit the water and dislocated his hip, but luckily he survived. Many people would like to break Lasso's record, but are they prepared to risk it? After all, any misstep can lead to tragedy. When jumping into the water from a great height, it's very important to regroup well, because falling on your back or stomach can be very painful. Nevertheless, some people jump into the water just like that, flat on their stomach, and they do it from 36 feet height. Sounds like a fiction, but it's a fact, and the American Darren Taylor is proof of that. He climbs onto a 36-foot tower and jumps on his belly down into the pool, which has only 12 inches of water in it. In 2011, he did this in Trondheim, Norway, jumping from 36.7 feet height, before breaking his own record by raising the height to 37.7 feet. No wonder they call him Professor Splash. Any normal person would have broken all bones and went to the hospital for a couple of months after such a jump, but Professor Splash every time gets up from the pool unscathed. How's that possible? As Taylor himself says, the main thing is to splash as much water out of the pool as possible during the landing. The American does it by sticking out his stomach and spreading his arms and legs to get as much contact area with the water as possible. That is, his technique is exactly the opposite of the technique of professional divers. Well, Professor Splash sounds convincing, but I wouldn't follow his advice, and I don't recommend it to you. Curtis Rivers. I'm sure you've all seen this footage of people bungee jumping from high bridges and rooftops. They can fly several dozen or even hundreds of feet before the rope is fully tensioned. It looks epic, but it's too boring for Curtis Rivers. This guy is a cool thrill seeker who set a phenomenal record. In 2001, he performed a bungee jump from 15,197 feet height. That's right, over 2.7 miles. It's hard to believe that this is even possible, but it's a fact. Of course, Curtis was not jumping from a bridge or a building, but from his hot air balloon. The balloon went up in the air over the Spanish town of Puerto Llano. Curtis secured his gear and jumped down. He was held down by a 32-feet rope, which stretched to 98 feet in flight. So yes, he didn't fly 2.7 miles down on the rope, but even so, his achievement looks epic. Stay tuned, and very soon you'll find out how high Cristiano Ronaldo and Michael Jordan jump, and also see the highest skydiving and skydiving without a parachute which you will not believe. Beautiful goals in soccer can be scored not only with the feet but also with the head. And many of you will agree that in this regard, Cristiano Ronaldo has no equal. The Portuguese literally flies around the pitch. Just look at his amazing goals against Chelsea in the 2008 Champions League final, or against Manchester United in 2013. But in 2019, Ronaldo surpassed himself. Back then, he played for Juventus, and in the game against Sampdoria, scored a goal with his head, jumping 28 inches above the ground. He was thus 8.3 feet high. The Portuguese's knees were at the level of his opponent's heads, so it was no surprise that he scored with ease. For a long time, it was Cristiano who was considered the main jumper in soccer, but not so. Thus, the soccer record for jumping now belongs to him. Although the guy's good, I think everyone would agree that Ronaldo's headed goals are much more elegant, because the Portuguese literally hangs in the air. In this respect, Cristiano is a bit like Michael Jordan. The legendary basketball player had a resounding nickname, his airness. Michael would pick up the ball, dribble it, then do a long jump and put it in the basket like he was flying on wings. It was hard to even call it a typical dunk, as it looked like Jordan was just smoothly lowering the ball in, not dunking it from above. Jordan's jumping has become his main thing, and the image of Flying Jordan adorns the logo of the company, Air Jordan. Like Cristiano, Michael held the record for the height of the jump for a long time. By the way, it was something between 43 to 47 inches. But last year, a new jumping leader appeared in basketball. A young Keon Johnson set the NBA DraftKings vertical jump record with a jump of 48 inches, just barely beating Jordan's height. Keon can jump both at a run and from the ground. Either way, he's able to soar very high. He's good, and he broke the record rightfully, but he's yet to show the full extent of his leaping ability in a real NBA game. If you ask me, it's too early to call Keon the new his heir. Okay, jumping basketball players and soccer players are cool, but skydiving is much more epic. Plus, if skydiving is performed from a huge height, you can jump from a height of several hundred feet or a couple of miles. But what about jumping from a height of 24.2 miles? It seems impossible, but Felix Baumgartner doesn't agree with it. In 2012, he got into the stratosphere in a balloon and jumped down. He flew for a very long time, a little over 9 minutes, of which 4 minutes and 19 seconds he spent in free fall, reaching a speed of 728 miles per hour. That is, Felix broke the sound barrier. In the middle of the flight, Baumgartner opened the parachute and safely reached the ground, setting several records. It would seem that this is the limit of man's ability, but no. Just a couple years later, Felix's record was broken by Alan Eustace. Alan got to an altitude of 25.7 miles while strapped to a balloon. At the maximum altitude, the balloon sort of shot Alan with a special explosive device, and he went into a free fall. Alan flew to Earth for 15 minutes. He reached an even higher speed, speeding up to 820 miles per hour in flight. Eustace broke the world records of initial altitude and free fall distance. Although he could be considered the more successful skydiver, he and Baumgartner jumped with different parachutes and from slightly different conditions, so they can both be considered champions and great record holders. What would be cooler than a parachute jump from a giant height? Only a jump without a parachute from a great height. It sounds like complete nonsense, because falling from a giant height without a parachute is practically certain death. Yes, there are nuances. The record holder in this regard is American stuntman Luke Akins. In 2016, he stepped out of an airplane at 4.7 miles height and landed 2.5 minutes later with no injuries. The thing is that Luke didn't fall on the ground or in water, but on a special net. The size of the net was 98 by 98 feet, and spotlights were placed around it. This is how Akins oriented himself in flight. The netting seemed not small, but when flying from 4.6 miles, anything could go wrong. Luke could have gotten lost in space, lost consciousness, or just missed a bit. Fortunately, that didn't happen. He was on a clear course and flipped over in the last seconds before landing to fall on his back and reduce the risk of injury. It should be noted that Luke jumped without a parachute or wingsuit at all. That is, if anything, he could not back himself up. There's another discipline in which there's at least some kind of safety net. It's called bonsai skydiving. The essence is that a thrill seeker is in an airplane or in a balloon. They throw down first their parachute and then jump themselves. Their task is to catch up with the parachute in flight, put it on and unfold it before the critical altitude is reached. Look how Finnish skydiver Antti Pentikainen does it. The courageous guy drops his parachute, takes off his shirt, and jumps down from a height of 2.4 miles. After 40 seconds of freefall, Antti grabs hold of his partner and reaches the ground unharmed without a parachute. Even though he was being backed up by other skydivers, everything could have gone wrong any second. In general, the crazy Finn was lucky to perform a 100-point bonsai skydiving. Let's go back from balloons to land. There's another cool high jump record worth talking about. The high jump is a great exercise. It's often practiced by CrossFitters and other athletes. The exercise is quite difficult, which makes Christopher Spell's record look even cooler. The guy became famous in 2020 when videos of his jump started going viral in the internet. The guy soars onto tires which are about 5 feet high, like a vulture or an eagle. It's unbelievable that he can conquer such heights. But this isn't the limit. In February 2021, he jumped to a height of 5.5 feet, setting a new record. Spell says he's trying to prove there are no limits to what people can do. Well, he's doing it good. And lastly, let's take a look at the beautiful jump from the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. Its height is 2,716 feet. Of course, this is not a 25.4-mile jump from the stratosphere or a net jump from 4.3 miles height, but it's also very good. In addition, there are no higher buildings in the world yet, so this is the maximum possible height of the jump from a building. French base jumpers Fred Fugan and Vince Refit jumped. With their 2014 jump, they set a world record. No one had ever jumped from the highest point of the Dubai skyscraper before then. The Frenchmen jumped simultaneously, and then after circling the building and leaving colorful trails behind them, opened their parachutes and made a soft landing. Well done. That's all, guys. Would you like to jump off the Burj Khalifa? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.